Hello, hi everyone. Hope if you're in the UK or Ireland, you're having a good bank holiday Monday. And I thought it was time to go over the Spanish elections and how it ties in with some of the things that I'm seeing in the Spanish chart. Now, like I said before, Spain has two charts, one from 1479, so we're going back a long way, and one for 1973 after the whole Castro affair. So what I found quite interesting was that between those two charts of Spain, there were an incredible amount of similarities. So I thought that really works out, because aren't we seeing the nature of Spain carried forward into the future? So although we have a new chart, so many themes that are continuing. And I saw that when I looked at the two charts for Iran as well, that no matter if a country has two charts, you often see similar themes playing over and over again. So the two big themes I saw coming for Spain was financial crisis, some sort of injection of cash, maybe a bailout coming, a collapse of one of the banks, a re-emergence of Catalonian independence, and yes, and that was it. And also a great deal of instability in the political system, and a big change coming because of Pluto moving solar arc to conjunct Mercury in the 10th house. So I see a big shakeup in their whole system. So those are the themes for Spain. So let's just look back at the elections that have just happened and see how that all plays into it. So as expected, and the polls were suspiciously accurate for the way that they got the numbers right. But the party PSOE got 123 seats. It's not enough for a ruling party because you need 176. But in most of European politics, where you have a proportional representation, it's kind of not unusual that one party doesn't get a majority. Because Spain has Mercury in the 10th house, you always expect the leading party to be made up of a few different parties, as indicated by Mercury, don't you? So that's what we've got there. So now, who are the PSOE? They're going to have to form a coalition with somebody. They're kind of the centre-left party. They're very much like the Blairites. In fact, looking at all the parties vying for top dog in Spain, so many similarities to what's going on in the UK. So here we have the PSOE, which are pretty much like Blairites, right? They're the neoliberal socialists, sort of socially liberal, politically neoliberal, economically neoliberal, right? Then we have the next party is PP. They like our Conservative Party, but they are like the main body of our Conservative Party, the kind of Theresa May part of the Conservative Party. They had a dramatic fall, 32% down, and they only managed 66 seats. Similar to Theresa May, they have a leader who's totally uncharismatic, not inspiring at all, and the public have just got annoyed with them. So I think it's very much like here. It's not so much that the public want to shift to the left, but they're shifting to the PSOE because they just fallen out of favor with the PP party, and they're not really inspired by the leader. Just as I think many people here who usually vote Conservative have kind of had enough of the current leadership. Then we have Ciudadanos, which is shortened to CS. They would be very much like our Change UK party. So kind of middle of the road between the Blairites and the Theresa May side of the Conservatives. And they got 57 seats. Now, usually them and PP would maybe form a coalition together. They could have even formed a coalition with Vox, but they just failed to get enough seats. So that's not going to be possible. Next, we have Podemos. Podemos are just like Labour with Jeremy Corbyn and Momentum, plus throw in a touch of Justin Trudeau because they are really woke when it comes to feminism and all these issues. So that's who Podemos are, and it looks likely that they are going to form a coalition with the PSOE because, as you can see, those come together quite naturally. Now, Podemos didn't do that great. They got 42 seats, but their numbers were down 21%. So as you can see, there's not really a big appetite for their brand of socialism either. Then we have Vox, of course, which got 24 seats. So they went from absolutely nothing to 24. Vox could most closely be represented by the ERG in the UK plus UKIP. So people would say there was always been a right-wing element in Spanish politics that has been hiding within the PP party, but now they've decided to break away. And I see that's very similar to the Eurosceptic element that's always been within the Conservatives. The part of the Conservatives that is more right-wing would like to move to the right, were some of them of which were moving to UKIP, right? And that is what's represented by Vox. Yes, I believe two people were having a fantastic debate on my page about, Vox being a throwback to Castro. But I feel the situation has changed in Spain. And what Vox really reflect is the populist nationalist surge going on all over Europe. That's not necessarily right wing, but it's people who want to go back to a traditionalist, more closed borders, more closed economy approach. Hi, Kevin. Blessings, Lisa Lazuli, and love and light from Brooklyn. Oh, hello. Fantastic, Brooklyn. I'm thrilled to have someone from Brooklyn watching. Brilliant. Thank you. Thanks, Kevin. Great to see you. So yes, so there we go. So that's who Vox is. So I think Vox, what we're going to be seeing, I did mention that there's going to be a surge in support for the nationalism, and that vote can only really go to Vox. So they've made a big impact. Now, while 24 seats is not really enough to get into a ruling party, it creates this drag factor, because just the same way as when UKIP were doing really well and getting 5 million votes, even though they didn't get one MP, they totally influenced the Tory party, didn't they? Because the Tory party, that's why they ended up giving us the referendum. So the emergence of a strong party on the right that is separate from the PP, because really what power do they have if they're within the PP? They're strong out, does create that drag factor. And I feel that with the election of the PSOE, who are probably going to go into coalition with Podemos, and that's still not enough. They're going to need another partner. So who is it going to be? Well, they could join up with a Basque party, but that still wouldn't get them right up to the magic 176. So I think they will probably join up with the ERC. That's the Catalonian Independence Party, basically. However, let's not get distracted by this, because the Catalonian Independence Party are just like our SNP. It's kind of a fake independence movement, because they're open borders, they're extremely liberal, they're also kind of on the Justin Trudeau liberalism, and they're extremely left-wing. So really, they're exactly the same as Nicola Sturgeon's SNP, and they're not nationalist at all. Remember, the big plan with the EU is to break every country down into regions. So, of course, here in the UK, we were going to have the southeast, the northwest, Cornwall was a region. And so the devolution of Wales and Scotland played right into that. So the Catalonian Independence Party really are total Europhiles. And they are also looking to play into this whole breakup of countries, which would suit the EU perfectly, and is a plan of the EU. So you've got to watch out for that. So in my prediction for Spain, I said in roughly 4 years' time, 3.5 to 4 years' time, this whole Catalan independence thing will become a big thing again. And why is it? Because in order to sweeten the pot for the ERC to join a coalition with PSOE and Podemos, they're going to have to give concessions, namely devolution, extra powers for Catalonia. And that's why we're going to see maybe not a total split, but maybe what we have here with Scotland is a significant new government or assembly with great powers. And it's going to have to happen now, because that's the only way they'll cooperate in a coalition with those other two. So we can see now why that's going to happen. Also, obviously, with Podemos and PSOE, we know the policies of socialist parties or parties on the left. It's mass immigration and a great deal of spending. And I think this great deal of spending and the mass immigration and the strain it's going to put on is going to be what is going to tip Spain into this position of needing a bailout. Now, there is a synergy between the things that are happening in the stars now in 1993, when there was a banking crisis and one of Spain's major banks collapsed. So I think that is definitely a possibility for Spain going forward in the next few years, because so much was showing up with the 8th house and with the 2nd house. With the 2nd house, Jupiter was activated, meaning an excess of spending. So I think the PSOE is going to increase the budget massively, and there'll be a huge drive probably on not for austerity, but to spend more and more. But I think it's going to be totally misguided, because with all this action in the 8th house, it shows they're going to land up in a situation totally dependent on bailouts and an injection of cash from other people. Okay, so let's just talk a little bit about Spain's chart. We've got the 22nd November 1975 chart, which means Spain is a Scorpio with Aquarius rising. And you have Sun conjunct Mercury right near the midheaven in the 10th house, also Neptune in the 10th house. Plus you have Venus conjunct Pluto in the 8th. So you see there the big financial crisis coming with that one. Jupiter in the 2nd, the tendency to kind of overspend and to have boom and bust, definitely very good times, huge inflows of cash, and then times when it all goes pear-shaped. If we look at the chart for January the 19th, 1479, we again see an Aquarius rising. And this time the sun has a prominent position on the ascendant, even though it's in Aquarius this time. Once again, we have Neptune in the 10th house, and once again, Pluto in the 8th house. So look at all the similarities between these charts for Spain, both Aquarius rising. And I think that kind of is a nod to Spain being a freedom-loving, innovative country with a lot of flair, and that they are a country that are going to rebel against this whole EU thing. It's in their nature to lead and to rebel. That's why I think the Vox Party will get stronger as well. And the whole drive towards nationalism, it's in Spain's character, and there will be a surge again. That's why I'm thinking that Spain is going to be the next Italy, and that just by the virtue of the fact that we have this PSOE, Podemos, plus the, who I call the Scottish National Party, the Catalonian Party of Spain, coming together, we're going to see now a doubling down on all the exact policies that are driving people to Vox. If we'd had a PP coalition with the other one, Queer-Damus, it's far less likely that Vox would have grown in support, because they could have adopted some of Vox's nationalist policies to dilute down their support. But of course, because we've got the left wing in control, we know what's going to be happening, which means more and more people will go towards Vox. So that will become the new phenomena and the new force that we see in the chart emerging in the Spanish chart and in Spanish politics. Just to say, the one other possibility for a coalition is Queer-Damus with PCOE. However, that would be popular with politicians, but that would both damage those political parties with their base, because the voters for those two parties would be extremely aggro to that coalition. So that's why that one probably wouldn't happen. All right. So yes, and both Spanish charts had Neptune in the 10th house. We know Spain, seafaring nation. I'm going to come back to all these a bit more. In both of the cases, Saturn was on the descendant in the 7th. Spain's been quite a competitor in terms of conflict as things have gone on through their history. They've been a tough opponent, and they've beaten off some tough opponents, as you'll see when I chat a little bit about the history. In each chart, there is a powerful 10th house packed with important planets or important conjunctions. For example, in their 1479 chart, they've got the important Uranus-Neptune conjunction going on in the 10th house, which shows that they were at the forefront of kind of the new wave, in fact, and that was what? The discovery of the New World, and Spain was at the forefront of that. And every time you see one of these Uranus-Neptune conjunctions, you get a shift in global perspectives, and it usually is a marker. For example, it was a marker in terms of Christianity starting, a marker in terms of Islam starting, and here it was a marker towards colonialism starting. Spain and then UK and France and all the others expanding out into Africa and South America, but Spain was at the forefront of that, hence why that chart's so strong. That's so strong in the chart, at least. So and of course, Spain geographically extremely strategic. It's got a coast on the Med, it's got a coast on the Atlantic. It's kind of that bridge, isn't it, between Europe and the Middle East to America and to the Americas, and also a bridge from Europe down to South America. So strategically, geographically, very important country, and that shows up. In both the charts, we've got Mercury on either the node or an angle, because what? Spanish is one of the most spoken languages in the world. You know, Spanish was spread because of the colonialism. In both cases, the node was on an angle. Pluto in the 8th house in both cases. Mercury was on the south node, yes, and in both cases there was an angle between the moon and Pluto. Why I think the Scorpio theme and the Pluto in the 8th theme is important is probably because Spain was one of the countries that re-emerged after the Caliphate. It beat off the Caliphate, and that's when the chart starts, the 1479 chart. So Spain was at the forefront of the fight and the pushback against the emerging Caliphate. And that's why I think there's this theme of rebirth. And also in the current Spanish chart being Scorpio, it re-emerged from fascism. from Franco. You know, it re-emerged and blossomed into something else, and I think it will re-emerge from the EU dictatorship and blossom as well. So just a couple of things to chat about Spain. Like I say, the Reconquista. Spain was reunited after the whole spell under the Caliphate. It was, of course, the first global empire, and at one stage was the most powerful country in the world, which is why we see sun right up there. It's so important in Spain's chart, both charts, either on the midheaven or on the ascendant. A powerful country, also a monarchy. Okay. As far as Mercury having a prominent position is because of Spain's big cultural impact and linguistic heritage that it's spread all over the world. There are 570 million Spanish speakers, the second most spoken language in the world. Spain was responsible for the golden age, with advances in the arts, famous painters. I think that plays into the Aquarius rising, you know, all these advances at cutting edge of art, also philosophy. Spain has the third largest number of UNESCO heritage sites, so a great deal of history there. They are a secular parliamentary democracy, as you would expect from an Aquarius rising country. And because Saturn is in their seventh, they're very keen on forming constructive relationships with other countries. They are, of course, in the UN, EU, Eurozone, Council of Europe, OECD, Schengen, the WTO, of course, you'd expect it. When Spain was initially formed, was the 1469 chart was the marriage of Isabella of Castile and Ferdinand II, and that was the end of the Caliphate. And it was also the time of the Spanish Inquisition, which was extremely bloody time, just as was the Spanish Civil War. So that's why we see this Pluto in the eighth. It is a country that's gone through quite extreme and tumultuous times. It's almost like it's had to cleanse itself of its past in many cases, and via conflict, something else has emerged. Hence all this theme of Scorpio. Okay, then of course, shortly after the 1469 chart was when Christopher Columbus arrived in the New World. He was funded by Queen Isabella, and the Americas were colonized, of course. The very first round the world voyage was by Juan Sebastian Elcano. And so again, this, you know, Uranus spirit of adventure, of discovery, of new frontiers, very much epitomized by that. And Spain used the newly Christianized Mexico as a launch pad to battle against Islam in the Philippines, where the Sultan of Brunei was using the Philippines as his kind of personal fiefdom. Hi, Anilty. Hi, Kevin. Thanks, Kevin. I know. You know, Kevin, it's amazing how when you look at a chart of a country, you start off and it feels a little bit, you know, confusing. And you look at all these symbols. And then as you delve more into it and think more about it, it really reveals so much of the country's character as you check it back up against the history. And then you think, well, wow, this is telling us a huge amount. So yeah, so Spain thought that when they were fighting the Sultan of Brunei in the Philippines, you know, that was a kind of redoing of the Reconquista. And isn't that kind of what's going on now? Philippines, there is a fight there because Islam has got a foothold in some of the islands of the Philippines, and they're trying to spread out from there. So then Habsburg Spain was one of Europe's leading powers during the 16th century and the 17th century. And there was a huge amount of wealth in Spain from trade and from their colonial possessions, and because they were the leading maritime power. So again, the maritime power and Neptune in both charts in the 10th says this, you know, the trade and the exotic things being brought from all around the world, you know, the spices, the materials, all that flooding into Spain. And Jupiter in the second shows that Spain has always had the great potential for wealth. As I say, they've got a fantastic history, and they've got a great cultural heritage, and they, you know, geographically significant. And you can see here, you know, the wealth emerging. Yes, at some stage there was a centralization of royalty and power, and things began to become more authoritarian. So there's always, with Sun in the 10th house, there's always a little bit of authoritarian streak running through the rulership of the country. Spain was the first empire on which the sun never set, and also the age of discovery, when there were new trade routes, where precious metals were transported, spices, luxuries, new plants. You know, that's all the, you know, Aquarius rising, everything new, you know, embracing all the different things from new cultures. The European understanding of the globe was vastly expanded by the Spanish Golden Age. So they were at the cutting edge of new thought, new discoveries, new philosophies during that time. So I think we've seen that there's no coincidence why Spain has rather an exciting and illustrious chart to match the illustrious past. So now we just have to look into the future And as I say, we're going to definitely, because of Pluto, solar arc, conjuncting Mercury in the 10th house, and then in 3.5 to 4 years' time, it's conjuncting the Sun. And that has a linkage to the Catalan independence, but also to more dramatic shifts in Spanish politics. So think of this election as Act One, where a party like Vox has got a foothold and where people are kind of beginning to wake up, I think, to what's going on, wake up to globalism, wake up to the fact that, wait a minute, we're all in different countries, but we're all on exactly the same script. What is happening here? They're starting to wake up and think, let's do something about it. And it will see a split where certain people are going to feel themselves much more pulled in the Vox direction, and other people may be pulled in the opposite direction. I mean, each to his own. But obviously, we all know on this channel, we tend to favor the populist nationalists movement in countries because we prefer to have single separate countries, and we tend on here not to favor globalism. So anyway, hola everybody. I hope that was great. Hope you enjoyed Spain.